After two large earthquakes, one in September, one last month, Ken Ring has predicted another one for this weekend. He's now denying having made that prediction, but he did, not just online either. You're about to hear part of an interview he gave to Australian breakfast television in which he explicitly warns Australians off visiting Canterbury this weekend. You will hear those words for yourself. All this has had such an impact on some people in Christchurch that the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, Professor Sir Peter Gluckman, has today rubbished Mr Ring's predictions. So is there any science in this? Tristram Clayton went looking for answers.
Christchurch, February the 22nd. A terrifying bolt from the blue or the foreseeable result of a pattern of events. Ken Ring believes a careful analysis of the moon's cycles can help predict when an earthquake will strike. He warns another big one could be on its way. This is what he told an Australian audience 2 weeks ago.
If you're planning to come to New Zealand around about the 19th to the 21st of March, I would just suggest you avoided the Canterbury area. The rest of New Zealand is fine, pristine, nothing is going to happen around the rest of the place.
And when asked on Facebook if it was safe enough to attend Friday's Memorial Day, he replied, "Short answer, I'd stay away." Ring's theory is relatively simple, based mainly on the gravitational pull of the moon as it revolves around the Earth. He believes that in the same way the extra pull on the oceans from a full moon gives us higher than normal tides, it also means more pressure on the Earth's crust. At points of weakness, such as fault lines, he says this leads to a greater chance of earthquakes. Scientists have been studying the effect of the moon on earthquakes for over 100 years.
This influence that the moon has on the fault pales in comparison to the influence of, say, other faults.
Some say a small connection might exist in some circumstances, but none believe such a link could be used to predict quakes.
Even if there's the tiniest little bit of correlation, it's actually inapplicable for most settings in most cases, and so it's not really, justifiable. And some people just want to know certainty. They want to be able to put a date on their calendar when they should be out of town, and we cannot do that. We are unable to do that because we are unable to predict earthquakes at this stage.
So what do scientists make of Ken Ring's apparent prediction of the February 22nd aftershock?
Each dot is a day's worth of earthquake activity. This is how far away, so as you go.
David Winter is in the final stages of a PhD at Otago University. He took time out from his studies to investigate Ring's claims. His first concern was the number of earthquakes Ring predicts.
Right. When we hear about Ken Ring predicted this earthquake on the 22nd, what we have to ask is, how surprising is that? And I don't think it's particularly surprising when you realise that Ken Ring predicted earthquakes, well, possibly almost on every second day between January and March. He predicts these really
Winter points to one article dated February the 1st in which Ring lists the days in 2011 on which he believes there's an increased possibility of a major earthquake. The dates are based on days when the moon is either full or new, closest to or furthest from the Earth, or when the moon is directly over the southern hemisphere. He also gives himself plus or minus a day wriggle room on either side of the predicted day. All of which means that according to Ken Ring, there are 221 days of increased risk this year.
He predicts these really large windows and his predictions are vague, so it's not surprising once an earthquake's happened that Ken Ring will be able to link one of his predictions to that earthquake. I think it's quite easy to get something right if you're guessing that often.
So what about the cycle of the moon and actual earthquakes recorded in Canterbury since the 7.1 quake on September the 4th? First, Winter looked at the moon phase. The top of the curve indicates a full moon, the bottom a new moon. Ring believes these are both times when there will be strong increases in earthquake activity, the spikes on the red line. David Winter plotted the information with line of best fit to see if there was any correlation.
There's very, very, very slight relationship, but it actually goes the opposite of the way Ken Ring thought it would. So the relationship is curved and very slightly this way, but Ken Ring actually would have predicted, based on his theory, that it would have gone this way, which is not what we see.
Ironically, this means the full moon on March the 20th would actually make Christchurch safer than normal. Winter also looked at the moon's distance from the Earth. According to Ring, earthquakes are more likely when the moon is closest to or furthest from the Earth. If Ring's right, the line should curve up at both ends. It clearly doesn't.
But really, if you tried to then turn this around and predict when an earthquake was going to happen, it's pretty useless. There's this huge scatter all the way across. And
Winter's analysis seems compelling, but somehow Ken Ring comes to a very different conclusion. On his website, Ring uses exactly the same GNS data to say, "I could not have come up with a better graph to support my case." Go figure. Interestingly, this particular sentence has now been deleted.
I mean, there have been many of these predictions that have been made which are incorrect, which haven't been true, but they just sort of get wiped from our memories. They get erased from the websites.
Neither scientist says they're out to get Ken Ring, and both decline to talk about some of Ring's more unusual publications, like his book about reading your cat's paws.
I don't think we should focus on someone's qualifications. We should focus on the methods and whether they work, and that's a very easy thing to do to check, and they just don't.
Yeah, so it's not really about the science in this case. It's whether it is morally responsible to make a pseudo-prediction, a prediction which actually has just as much chance of being correct as it does being incorrect, and then broadcasting that in such a way that installs fear and panic in people and creates this sort of, this sort of real, I guess, feeling that scientists cannot be trusted or that we're not doing our job. I mean, look at us, some of us are living here, and all of us are investing all of our energy into trying to understand this problem.
Both scientists say what is needed in Christchurch is verifiable information, such as that provided by the government's GeoNet website. Its statistics are based on years of hard data from earthquakes around the world. And unlike Ken Ring, the GeoNet scientists have got it right on every single occasion since September the 4th. So what do they say about Ring's latest prediction?
People are scared in Christchurch at the moment, and they're desperate for information, and I think people that are providing information to people have a responsibility to make sure that they've checked everything and that they're providing verifiable information, and I don't think Ken Ring was doing that.
I'm not prepared to live my life by pseudo predictions that don't actually have any real basis. They're not replicable.
Will you be leaving Christchurch on March the 20th?
No, we'll be here. We'll be here. Yeah, we'll be here.